What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Roofing Matrix podcast. Today we have a very, very, very special guest, Mr. Frank Gonzalez. Frank, the floor is yours. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're based out of, the company that you own, and yeah, the floor is yours.
Okay. Try to make this brief because I could go on, but obviously, my name is Frank Gonzalez. I'm a licensed architect and also a licensed contractor here in Illinois for various areas where you're in Illinois. It's slightly different than other states. Each municipality has to be a licensed contractor in that state. But for roofing, you have the entire state. You need to pass an exam. And once you pass the exam, you apply, you submit the paperwork, and you get your license with your insurance, bonding, and so on and so forth. I've been doing construction for over 30 years. I've worked in many states. I do fly around occasionally and troubleshooting existing buildings, whether it's water infiltration on the facades or on the roof. I do have developed my own equipment that actually tests when there's a leak. We mimic the rainstorm again. The idea is that we provide evidence. We're not in the guesswork. We are not giving you guess and ideas or assuming this or assuming that. In my 20 years or so, I have this experience. I said, no, if you don't know, you don't know, and we need to test, and we provide evidence. We're evidence based. That's one of the services I provide for roofing and facades. I also design new construction, but mostly it's maintaining and repairing buildings to their highest value. When the owners want to sell, they can sell at the highest value. So I can go on, but I think that's enough for now.
No, great introduction, Frank. We really appreciate the insight there. Can you take us all the way back? You said you've been doing this for about 30 years now. Take us all the way
hmm
back to when you first started. I guess, what did life look like for you then? Were you strictly an architect? You did not dibble and dabble on the construction side or the contractor side of things, or how did that look?
Well, I can tell you, as as a young individual growing up I grew up in South Florida, Miami. I always liked construction. I like art. Actually, I was more artistic in the sense because I was always drawing, sketching, painting, and so on and so forth. And then slowly but surely, my mom or my dad would say, "Hey, I think you're going to be a graphic designer, maybe an architect because you like buildings a lot." And da, da, da. Well, to fast forward, I went through high school, took construction classes there, a couple technical classes, and then very quickly, I went to a university, transferred, went to University of Houston in Texas. Go Cougs. They're doing really good. Yeah,
Attaboy,
my
yes,
alma
sir.
mater. Yeah, there you go. But it's been a long ride there. We weren't always as good as we are now. Anyway, and then shortly after that, when I graduated with a 5-year degree, I decided back to Florida. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to stay here. I want to see somewhere else. So, kid, mid-20s or something like that, decides to go to New York City with nobody that I knew out there, just plane ride, ticket, get on the plane, one suitcase, and boom, I was there.
That's a big jump.
There I did, yes, crazy. People, my family thought I was insane because, like, what are you doing there? You don't know
Right.
anybody there. I don't know. So what? We'll figure it out, right?
But
so,
courage is what wins nowadays. So I guess in all days, you know?
yeah, yeah. Now I look back and like, I don't want to, I wouldn't recommend one of my kids do that. They're in their 20s now. Dad will go with them. And I did work for a number of design firm there because that was my focus, first design, designing homes, large buildings, and so on and so forth. There were some I was involved back then. But then the recession hit, and a lot of people lost their jobs. Everybody, engineers, architects, stockbrokers, didn't matter who. And then I had to recreate, like, okay, what am I going to do here in the city? I've only been here for less than a year, and now this happened. And so I just started doing freelancing, and freelance is somewhat good because you dabble here, dabble in different types of construction, from field architect to working in the office to maybe getting on a scaffold, things like that I never even thought I would ever do. And as that grew, I eventually morphed because I realized that I wasn't too happy with the very, very long hours the architectural firms, sometimes for you're an intern because that's what I was. And, you're probably working 50 hours a week, sometimes 7 days a week. It's insane. And getting compensated for 40. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I started thinking outside the box, and I had friends that were engineers, and they say, "Well, you don't work that long, and we get paid this much," and da 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 da. And I'm like, "Well, that's more than I can." He goes, "Why don't you come and work at our firm? We have architects, and they get paid the same salary that we do." Like, okay, that makes
Sounds
good
good to
sense.
me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it sounds like, and yeah, so was doing architecture. It wasn't what What I did start doing is they were specializing in structural engineering, and structural engineering involved facades, restoring old historical buildings, or many vintage type. And what I mean by that is that if you live in New York City, literally, I think I think 3 out of 5 it's an historical building. I mean, everywhere you walk, because it's the city, it's an old city, same as Boston, and Chicago somewhat, but Chicago is a smaller city compared to New York City. And there, I really learned. I really cut my teeth there because I started designing the repairs in the office in the morning. Then shortly later, we would print the drawings out, and then we'd go to the contractor later in the afternoon, have meetings, and then they would implement the repairs. And then the next day I was following up, making sure that they're following the specifications. I was writing scaffolds, those platforms that goes up and down. And here I was, terrified of heights. And one of the first questions is, "Are you scared of heights?" Well, no, not really. 10 stories doesn't bother me. 10 story, well, 10 story is high too. And I'm like, oh my God, they put me in a 44-story building from the top down. I'm like, this is like what? This is insane. I mean, this is like boot camp and like in steroids. And talk about, like,
Absolutely.
I didn't do anything. All I was doing is shaking and holding on, because those things move with the wind a little bit, and you're swaying until you get comfortable, and then you sway with it. But it took some time. And after a while, I got comfortable. Now, am I afraid of heights? Yes, I am. But I am very cautious when I go on these. Fast forward into in recent years, I mean, probably 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I started doing now rappelling off buildings, which is another story,
Oh my
because
gosh.
yeah, there's safety features. You have to get certified. Oh, I did get certified to do that. That's not just a nilly willy that you go and, just because you like, what is it, rock climbing, you do get
Yes.
certified. And
Sounds like some special ops, you know?
yeah, 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 right, yeah. And so I do, and the reason why I do it because idea is makes it much affordable for the client to do that. Obviously, because there's less equipment. Because in many cities, including New York, if you're going to put a hanging scaffold, you have to put what they call either. There's two names here. We call it a canopy. In New York, they call it a. Oh my gosh, I just can't believe it. It'll come to me. The canopy here, a shed down there. Yeah, it's called a sidewalk shed. But it's basically just like a little bridge for people pedestrian. But that costs money because you have to build it. The contract builds this for the client. Then he has to put the scaffolds up there. Whether you're the architect or the engineer, you need two people running it. I used to run my own motor because they were at that time, because they wanted to make it much more affordable. But it came down that more and more people were doing, as years went by, rappelling, architects, engineers. You get trained for it, and there's flexibility in that now. I don't do it often, but I do it enough, and I do have safety individuals. I'm not doing it alone. God no. I have a person upstairs, up in the roof, watching me. I have one in the ground. Both of them are certified in case my cables get tangled up through the wind, because I can't see it. Sometimes they're looking down. They'll drop down like a bullet and then untangle me, and then they come down. So there's a
Man.
lot of there's a lot of safety involved with that. And it's called SPRAT, Society Professional Rope. I can't think of the entire acronym, but it's all over the country. It's more and more architects and engineers are doing it, and that's actually it sounds scary, but when you realize all the safety, you have double lines, you have full body harness. This is not the type of the window washers that you see a lot of times have what we call the balsam chair, which is a piece of wood. They sit on top. They have their regular harness, which has a hook in the back, which is deadly if they fall. It chokes your legs because of pressure of your weight. You will probably, if they don't rescue you within a certain amount of time, I don't know if it's 15 or 20 minutes, you become unconscious, and then you can pass away, die. This is not like this. This is more like a full cradle. You just held you like this. But anyway, I don't want to
Yeah,
keep getting into
what
weeds
no,
with this.
you're totally good. What you're describing seems way, way more safe, or way safer than,
Yeah,
cleaning high-rise windows, you know?
never ever would I do that. It's so unsafe. So in New York City, that's how I got into the restoration. We would, from how I morphed into the roof was basically interesting, because I was specializing in facade work. And then we go up to typically in New York City, the majority of buildings are flat roof, but they have a parapet. Are you familiar with a parapet? What the parapet
Uh,
is? Yeah. Okay. So, okay. Let me just draw it real quick. Super fast. Can you see this? I just drew it. Can you see it? See this wall
yes.
here? That's called a parapet. This is the roof. Okay, this wall here is basically for many reasons it's there. One is basic safety. When people are walking maintenance feet, they don't want them to go over because they're in very high environment. And another, it varies per code. What height is this? We call it this piece of wall. What's called the parapets from here. I'm trying to write like from here to here. That's so. As I was this part of the building is being repaired, it affects the roof because if you take all these bricks down, you're affecting the roof here, right? So you are somewhere around here. So then I had to understand how the membrane and how the roof membrane goes up, gets tied into the parapet or something like I'm trying to draw as best as I can backwards. Maybe I should use a marker because you can't see it.
Yeah.
Okay. Does that make sense to you, Jordan?
100%. Yeah.
Okay. And then there's windows down here, blah, blah, blah. This part was sometimes they have to be rebuilt. When it's rebuilt, that's affecting this because the roof does this more or less. See this curve that I just did going this is the roof. It takes tied into the bricks. And sometimes it's
Gotcha.
flat. We can go back and forth there's many techniques. I'm just giving you one. And that then I started understanding how the roof because I had to now say I'm going to be cutting this piece of roof, opening it up, and I have to then make sure it's married properly from the existing to the new, meaning it has to then match both in material. It has to be compatible in the material because if you have two incompatible materials, the adhesion doesn't work and you have a water leak problem because now you have a delamination occurring. That's how
Yeah,
I got
absolutely.
morphed into the roofing. And then from there, it led into more because every time in any roof, whether it's sloped or flat, when there's a penetration, that's a potential for a water leak. Okay. Ideally, the ideal roof does not have any penetration, but we know that's impossible because you need exhaust, you need pipes that go through it. Mechanical equipment has like HVAC system has to have the piping going into or the conduits going in. So now you have to flash that area. Are you familiar with the word flashing?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, good. So,
For
and
the audience
whether
that
you
might
use
not
it,
know, you can explain that.
flashing basically means flashing is a very I call it an open ended word because it all means basically it's another word for sealing. You're sealing the penetration when the pipe is going through, or okay, that's what it is. Now the design varies. When we refer to flashing, is basically you're gonna seal that area. There's many types. There could be one called pitch pocket, one's called the boot. Gotcha. Just understand that anytime a pipe goes through, anything goes through the roof, it's potential for a water leak. We have to make sure, as you know, both architects, engineers, and contractors, that's properly sealed and you're following the best roofing practices, which that's always a key because some, unfortunately, here at least in the Midwest, not all of the roofer have been properly educated and trained in best practices. They learn it from a friend or whoever, a relative, was doing it for 20 years. He was taught by somebody who did 20 years, but there's no good frame and method. Because I actually, from time to time, when it's a very large, I write the specification. They're going to follow what I write, the roofing contractor because like I said, I wear two hats. One's an architect and one is the contractor. Now from the architect, they follow. Then I'm hired to go and inspect the installation as it's progressing. And I let them know, okay, when you let's say you remove a section of the membrane, I need to see the deck below because if it's rotted, I have to document to let the client know that there's going to be an increase in cost because that's called an unforeseen condition because you can't see, through layers of roof, obviously. Um, so saying this means that I understand I'm fairly thorough and fairly experienced and understand how the roofing membranes of whether it's sloped or flat. And I see a lot of mistakes being done constantly. And it's sad because it's not my job. And I'm like, what am I going to do? And so when it's my job, there's another thing is that there's very few architects that actually physically manage their job. I'm one of them throughout the country. This is not even the Midwest. Okay. That do have dual companies. It does exist, but there are very few. And then out of that, there's very few that do manage their own projects. I want things done well, properly, and I do give warranties, but you know what? 3 or 4 years later, that warranty just went away. I still come back because it's my job. I mean, I take responsibility. Not everybody does that. And it doesn't have to be in writing. I just don't want to create animosity with a client that I had that was a good client many years ago. But I'm very different. I'm very transparent. Not everybody sees that. Some do, and then sometimes my prices are just reasonable, but they say, well, you're more expensive than so and so. Well, why? Well, I'm giving you more service. How often do you have an architect that's physically managing the job site, the roof installation? Well, oh, it's the foreman. Well, I still can't pay. I mean, you're looking for the lowest bidder, and at the end, it's going to reflect. Now, you won't know it in the moment. You will realize it 5 years later. That's the problem. There's always a delay. You don't see defects immediate. You will see it as time go by. And then by that time, like, no, because in Illinois, by law in construction, you only have to warranty for labor and material for 1 year, and we know that's nothing. It's basic.
Right.
That's just. But it is what it is. So what
Yeah,
else?
going back to with what you said, how you said you're one of the only architects that actually have a contractor's license, and they play both. They do both sides. I just from my exactly one of the few, one of the only ones. From my experience hosting the podcast and even just speaking with people in life in general, it is very rare that roofing companies, roofing contractors actually know the proper steps to replace a full roof, right? Like you were saying, they learned from their dad, who learned from their dad, and there was no proper foundation on how to actually do it properly. And when you don't do it properly, like you said earlier, the roof gets messed up 3, 5 years down the line, right? And
Hmm, hmm.
most of these contractors, from my experience, they do compete on price. And it sounds like you're quite the opposite. I'm a huge believer in we're not going to race to the bottom, right? I
Hmm,
do not
hmm.
want to be the lowest in the marketplace because that just speaks to the quality of your work.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah. I mean, that's correct. I don't wanna be that person because I give you more services. I mean, and then I'm looking at the material. I'm also when I'm about to replace a roof, I give them a very specific, scope of work, and when I'm buying materials, I'm not going to Home Depot or Lowe's. I mean, I'm going to, a roofing supply house, and then when I go to up to purchase a material, I am letting the person know, "This is the material I want. This is the how many millimeters. This is the type of flashing I'm looking for. This is how copper I'm looking for." I give them the gauge number and so on and so forth. I can be on that same counter. Another roofer is going to say, "Hey, here's the specification." Gives it to the sales guy. Says, "Hey, what do you think I should buy here?" I've seen this happen many times. I'm like, well, wait a minute. Who's the professional here? That guy's selling, and then your client's relying on this person who is the lowest of the low, or one of the second lowest in many cases, not necessarily always the lowest, but you're there, you're in the bottom tier. You don't want to be there because it's just it says a lot about you. I know we all have to feed ourselves and feed our family and pay mortgage, rent, whatever, but we can't be so harsh with our low prices because it's affecting our industry. The other thing is that you see this all the time, and I'm sure you'll see all over the place, free estimates. And I tell people like, free estimates? Free estimates don't pay the bills, and nobody likes working for free. How about that? When you're getting a free estimate, better be careful. I work as a consultant. I'll charge. And if you do hire me, I will then, you know, I'll figure out a way to reimburse you for some of the services because I'm not here, but I don't want you to waste my time and bid me out with 5 or 6 different companies, and everybody's trying to acquire the job or win the job at pretty much at the lowest bid, and that's just not what I want. I don't want to work with clients like that either. Fairly selective with my clients, but they should be aware that you're not getting the same services, and it's very hard to convince an individual because even though they know my credentials, they know I'm an architect, I have several licenses in masonry and in roofing, and home inspections too. They just at the end it comes down to dollar value, and like, oh
Hmm.
my god, you're killing me. You don't even
It
know what you're
is,
getting.
yeah, no, I've also been in sales for quite some time myself, and it's almost so disheartening when you go through your process, you build value, build value, build value, you logically explain why you're the better company, but at the end of the
Hmm.
day, they always get sticker shocked, one might say, or it just comes down to the last dollar. And it's like,
Right.
in my opinion, I feel like humans shouldn't make decisions based off of the lowest price. I mean, we can compare it with roofs, we can compare it with cars. Like buying the cheapest car will only get you what? So far, a year, two, 2 years max, you know? And it's just
Mhm,
you
mhm.
and I'm pretty sure most humans who own a home or even own a commercial building understand that the cheapest route isn't always the best route. But it still
No,
doesn't matter. Like, they still make that
doesn't
decision
matter.
based off of price.
It's
Isn't that
always a
interesting?
Yeah, it is, and they don't understand. They don't and then as much as I try to explaining, I have to be very careful when I explain my scope of work because they'll go and share that with another person. "Hey, can you beat that?" Of course he's gonna say yes, of course. But you still don't know, the homeowner doesn't know what material. He's not up there at the top of the roof. I mean, yeah, at the top of their building or home or commercial building, looking at the bags or the material where they're all labeled to make sure he's getting exactly what it says on the scope of work. So you don't. I mean, so it's hard. It is disheartening and it is sad, but it is reality. So we just have to find the right people, I guess, the right clientele to work with.
I was just gonna ask, how do you find that clientele? Do you feel like people come to you or
Well, one of the things that I do, I'm very involved with my community here. I'm also one of the commissioner here. I live in the area. It's called Hinsdale, and I'm one of the commissioners here. In the I'm in the Historical Preservation Commission, so it's a little bit of networking, but a little bit of, also trying to educate from time to time. I provide seminars to homeowners for individuals. So sometimes your best client is basically your repeat clients. The new clients are very difficult. I mean, very difficult to gain their trust because they don't know who you are. And the Google reviews, you got to be cautious with that. I know plenty of construction companies that have these unbelievable, beautiful Google reviews. And then when you do, as you're going down, 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 down to like number 40 or 50, you realize, oh my gosh, they've made a lot of mistakes along the way. And the reason I know that is because from time to time, I work with attorneys that specialize in construction law, and so they'll call me to give them an evaluation because there's a dispute, and I
wow.
get hired as an expert witness on roofing. Not something I really like to do because the opposing attorney is going to discredit you, and I like I'm too old for that. Look, dude, don't even go there. I'm not going to even answer anything. If I do, I actually say part of my requirement is you're going to hire my own attorney, so he can keep me out of hot water when these guys are just, these sharks are coming at me from 18 different directions. So
Alright.
the reason is that it seems that there's a lot of it's a tough business because homeowners don't know what they're getting, and off the record, I could tell you a few, but I won't tell you the names, but I can show you photographs of really ugly installations that shingles are coming off with the wind because they didn't, they weren't nailed properly. The ice and water shield, are you familiar with ice and water shield and the
Mhm.
slope roof?
I am, yeah.
Uh, was either missing or too short. The minimum is 3 feet and some municipality is 6 feet. It varies. And then they have water leak problems. And so it's crazy. It's a wild west here,
No,
or
no,
maybe everywhere.
absolutely.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
and it's everywhere, and that is the sad truth. It truly is all across the nation. Homeowners are being taken advantage of. Contractors, even large scale roofing companies, are completely taking advantage of homeowners and cutting corners, trying to yeah, cut corners and therefore save on costs. And it's extremely unfortunate, but again, I guess it is business. And that's partially why I've also created this podcast was to not only help roofing companies grow their brand awareness, but also help homeowners in the process for shopping for a new roof, right? So it's kind of
Mhm.
a two-way street.
Right, there are ways if it's hard for a homeowner to do this, but there are ways if they hire like me, there's other people that do it. I'm not the only one. They can hire me, and then I could be hired as more at the project manager, and I'll write the scope of work. We can bid it out, but I will enlarge roofing sorry, roofs like massive warehouses, like the type of Google massive warehouses, or even much smaller because they're huge. They'll write a specification, but in the spec there's a spreadsheet that basically you're labeling the square footages, the material you're going to install, and they're going to say by square foot, this is how much we're charging, in both square footage and linear feet. Because the reason is so it can be apples to apple. Nobody is saying, "Oh, I'm going to buy the cheapest." I mean, whether it's Firestone or Graph or gosh, so many different companies that have make materials for roofing. When you do that, you're now controlling the budget to some extent that they have to then bid apples to apples on the same quantity. Now you can see the price. You're not going with the lowest bidder. Those guys are not the lowest bidder, but you're going to get the quality, even if they can't go so low because the material doesn't exist. I mean, the cost of materials, the cost of material, the cost of the labor, the cost. Look, I don't care wherever you go around the country. The cost of material and labor doesn't change. The margins of the GC will vary a bit depending on the size of the job. It can be, it could be as high as 30, but it can be as low as 5% because depending if it's $5 million project, then obviously the percentages are much lower when it comes to the margins for profit. So, but at least you're getting exactly what you're asking for, meaning
No,
because you have somebody that's
absolutely.
helping you someone's helping you control the budget, someone's watching out after you. Oh, and by the way, just because I write specs, it's not that. I'm actually going to the job site every other day, taking photographs, writing reports, informing the contractor. That's how it works. You write a report, submit it very quickly the same day with 20 photographs, and this is where they are, what they're doing. They're following the specification according to what's written. So and that's done regularly, but that's in large many, not your typical homeowner that has a sloop roof that maybe is 20,000, 15,000. I mean, depending on the size of the home,
For
or more.
No, absolutely. With that being said, I know you work in many different areas within the roofing space. If you had to choose one, and this actually might be a tough question, if you had to choose one to work with for the remaining of your career, I guess what would it be?
Well, I mean, type of roof or type of client? What do you mean?
Not type of roof, probably type of client. Like, would you want to work with commercial buildings, residential, restoration of commercial or residential, or I guess you can elaborate on because you have so many different specialties.
Right. I mean, I'll make it really simple. It's not as hard as it is. I actually want clients who are proactive than reactive, meaning that when they start seeing, even if they're not sure, it says, you know what, I'm going to hire a professional to look at my roof or walk around my house or my building, and he's going to write a punch list and say these things, okay, whatever, this roof will need to be repaired in uh, basically might be at the end of its life, but at the same time, say, but if you repair it annually, you'll have it for another 10 or 15 years. Those are your best clients, which also are the clients that will hire you over and over, and they're willing to pay your services because they value your services. Basically, at the end, it's a client that values your services, and that could be for any contractor. And that's the best client you can have, whether it's historical, vintage, new construction, it doesn't matter. As long as they understand who you are and they value you. And that's a problem. There's a big mistrust in the construction industry. And it's basically, it's actually, I'll throw myself into it, but it's actually our fault because we're the contractor, because there are too many bad piranhas out there. They're doing bad work, and you only need a few to create a big stigma that every contractor is out to get the client. And that's not true at all. But unfortunately, that's out there because the contractors, because I see them and I'm like, how could you live with yourself? And what they say? It's not your house. Why do you care? Really?
Wow.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, my blood pressure just went up and I wanted to say many things, but I held back. But no, there should be some pride in the work you do. And so, but yeah,
Absolutely.
I'm adamant and oppose putting solar panels on roofs.
Talk to me. Yeah, no, please.
I'll tell you right now why. What happens when you have a leak? Because remember, the solar panels remember, every penetration you've put on a roof is a potential area for a water leak through your roof, right?
And if you
So
have
you
20
have all these
panels up
screws, all
there,
these fasteners. Yeah, you got all these, yeah, right, fasteners that's being held on. They have to be designed for wind loads. That's exactly. And by the way, those things want to, when the air gets under it, it wants to slightly be picked up. So it's putting stress on the what we call the roof deck, the plywood, if you want to call it for lack of a better word, but it's that we call it the deck. So that creates a problem. Well, when you have a water leak problem, and you know what I hear? I can't take those clients at all because it's everybody's pointing their fingers to solar panel saying no, that your roof is terrible because they did a terrible job. The solar panel guy, he's blaming the roofer. The roofer's blaming the solar panel guy. And so what happens is it's like I can test and I can find a leak. That's no problem. But I am not about to get in the middle of those two fighting because it's an endless war. It's just going to go on forever. And the problem is many roofs have either started or are leaking because of these panels. Now, I am not opposed to solar panel. That is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying, I'm opposed to solar panels on the roofs of building. If you're going to put solar panel, find a place in your backyard or somewhere and create like some sort of a staging apparatus so you can put your solar panels on and they could collect and then run. That's fine. That's perfectly fine with me. I'm not going against the solar panel company. I am going against that they shouldn't be on the roofs. And that's common sense, you know? So yeah, install your solar panels outside the home. And so if you don't have room, then you can't have solar panel. I don't know what to tell you. So because it's say like somewhere like New York City, where are you going to put solar panels? You can only put them on the roof.
Right.
I mean, and there are precautions way that you can kind of put on the roof if you can figure out a way to make sure that it's not touching the roof, that maybe it's going on the parapet, that wall I just mentioned, and then there's you bridging, and it's going to take some design, but there's a way to do that. Um, Touching base on something that's related, and I don't know if it's more around like city environment, Boston, Philadelphia, any place that I don't know about Utah or Salt Lake City. I mean, and maybe downtown. People like to put on flat roofs, particularly the homeowners. We call them three flat. Well, basically, it's a three-story residential building, rectangular building, and
There's a
brownstones is
couple of
called in New York
th-
City.
there's a couple of flat roofs here in downtown Salt Lake for
Okay,
sure.
okay, so people love to put the decks. I mean those outdoor decks, so they can put their furniture and just look out the skyline and get some sun and
Yes.
things like that. I mean they put barbecues and they put planters. Well, if you read it really well on flat roof, the warranty, the moment you put something on your roof, and if you're not using what we call a pedestal, which is it's a support in between the roof and the framing of the deck, you lose your warranty out the door because roofs are not meant to be walked on. That's the truth of the matter. Roofs are not meant to be walked on. It's not a sidewalk, people. You know,
Right, right.
it's not your sidewalk, and you're not going to sit out there on your lawn chair and sit on it. Well, you can, but you can at that moment. You're basically doing a lot of things. So you're squeezing the insulation down, the rigid insulation, and then you're creating bumps along or bubbling that we call it. That's one thing. Now there are ways to avoid that, like I said, you install, but that I see that a lot around here where they have water leak problems. And then I'm saying, well, your deck has to come out. Well, I just installed this deck 3 years ago and it cost me, 150,000 or 100 or 25,000, whatever the case. It has to come out. How can you fix a roof? And then don't put that back the way you had it. You now have to explain to them how it should be done properly. But that's a problem. Decks should not The framing of the deck should not sit directly on a flat roof or any roof for that matter. Same thing with solar panels. They should not be on a roof. Put it somewhere else. If you want a deck, you take the proper design precautions, and you speak to the manufacturer of the roofing. They will guide you. They'll explain to you which pedestals are correct to install underneath those decks. So you don't lose your warranty. Okay. You don't want to lose
That's
that warranty.
important. Right, that's
Yeah,
important.
and you can also with roofing manufacturers, you can buy it's almost called, I can't remember the name, but it's almost called like an insurance where they come every year or twice a year to inspect your roof, and if there's anything that needs to be done, in many cases they'll send their own technical technician for minimal fee to repair it, and that way you can continue to maintain your warranty. So there's a lot you can do for your roof to maintain it. It's just the homeowners that don't know the ins and out of the industry. In that case, for roofing materials and what they will warranty. Because you ask, and they'll come out for free in some cases to do a walkthrough. I mean, they're technicians. I mean, sales technician people that have been trained to look for oddities on the roof and maybe bubbling or potential alligatoring. That's when the roofs are really old. But mostly any potential seams that are basically they can see there's delamination, and then it can be repaired immediately to avoid a, a roof leak. But yeah,
For
so
sure. I'm actually gonna change direction just a bit now, and I want to ask you this question here. What part of your business do you personally spend the most time thinking about right now or in the past 7 days?
most of it. Well, right now it's winter here. I mean, we got snow outside, and there's pretty much every job of mine is stopped. What I think is how is next year going to look like, and so I
Okay.
spend more time now, bit marketing, spreading the word, talking to people, and networking. I do have a few projects in for next year on the boards, and like every time you need more. I mean, not less. But I think it comes down to they're two. It comes out to I I don't I'm trying to explain this in such a way that's easy to understand, is that it comes down to, look, there's more work there, more restoration work, more new construction, more work than there are the number of general contractors and people, carpenters and painters and all that. There's more work than the issue comes down is where the client wants to do it. That's a want, like I said, proactive, and then not reactive. And then the issue is the cost. Well, when they start comparing cost to cost, because if you have, think of it, if you're a startup company in construction, nobody knows, you're going to give them really low prices, just enough to get by. Just pay your guys, pay the bills for that week or 2 weeks, and go to the next job and do it again until you can get a steady clientele. Now you have a company that now it's seasoned. They've been proven. They have a historical track record, and they're going to be much higher. Okay. Because
Of
they know what
course.
they're doing. The younger company does not know. And they're actually the ones that are very dangerous to figure out, because although you think you're getting a good quality work, unless you know the person maybe was, who knows, an engineer, or who knows, or someone that grew up in the trade and was taught properly by conscious individuals that understand the construction industry. We call it the science of construction and material. If you understand science of construction and materials, then you are going to do good quality work. But there's very few to do that. Typically, you have an academic degree, and then you get professionally trained in best practices, and that takes a lot of time to do. I mean, I went through that many years ago, and so you want to make sure that obviously that the client understands that, but at the end of the day, they don't really know that, and they don't understand that. They don't see construction as a science, which in reality it is. All the materials that you see, whether it's windows or sealants, caulking, products, brick, I don't care, roofing materials, they all had to go through scientifically, they were
Yes.
developed in a lab,
Yes.
which is called
Yes. Yes.
science.
100%, my friend. Yes, Frank. No one has said it better than that right there. This is literally science, my friend.
Yeah, it is. So no one knows that. I mean, even a brick, you think, oh, a brick comes off the ground. Well, no, not really. Well, it does. It doesn't. Meaning, yes,
Right.
the raw materials, all the raw materials come from the ground. Okay, so, but they still have to be in a lab. They have to figure out how the materials adhere to each other. And there's a lot of trial and error, obviously, through many, many years. It's been developed. Um, there is a science to it. And so understanding,
Absolutely.
like, for example, if you're using silicone, that's a sealant. We call it a sealant, but people call it caulking. They use the word, interactorly, but in reality, there's two separate, but we're not going to get into the weeds in that. Say a polyurethane on a wall or around the parapet wall or in the flashing or wherever. And then you put, because you think, oh, it's delaminating because it's been there for 20 years or something. Now you can see it's brittle, it's bad, no good. The sealant has to be pulled out. A lot of times the contractor goes, just put more, more caulking. Now I'm just going to use silicone. You know why? It was on sale on Home Depot and I bought like 30 boxes, but
Right.
that material is not, silicone doesn't stick to anything pretty much when it comes to that. What they do stick to, it sticks to aluminum and glass very well. And it was designed around those premises, although now they have silicones that can go and, somebody said, no, he's not telling the truth. Like, well, I'm going with the basics. Okay. If you want to go into the weeds, we'll talk another time and we'll bore the audience to death too. Um, so it's one of those scenarios. You really have to understand your material, what adheres. Oh, here's something that it's related to roofing, because we're going to talk about the roof, and then we're going to talk about a lot of the new construction are using the spray foam, insulation that shoots out a gun.
Yes.
You familiar with that?
100%. Yeah.
If anything, on your podcast, if people are having some question following me, maybe this is a suggestion. It's your podcast. You might want to put some pictures along the way. I don't know if when you put your podcast,
Yeah, we have a full
if I
editing
say
team. Absolutely.
yeah. That what I mean is that when I say spray on, you take a picture of spray on someone with a gun and shooting it. A spray gun. That means not a rifle.
Right. Right.
And so what happens is a fluid type of insulation. It's used, it was invented, it's good, has a pretty good R value, resistant to heat and cold. Problem is that when it sticks, it's like basically an octopus in some sense. It just sticks really well, right? When you have a leak through the roof and you got this underneath your roof, say on your cavity wall, right underneath, because you have a cavity wall. Let me go back, back to draw. Let's see how I'm gonna do it. Okay. Try to do it at some 3D so you can get a sense. Okay. I don't know. This is your roof. And just I don't know, your truss is going this way. This is a very crude drawing. Say this is your top of the roof here, and this is the bottom. This is where you have all your trusses, right? Or joists, or open web joists, whatever. Under here, they'll spray it because they want to create insulation. Because the roof, typically a a flat roof has very little insulation underneath the membrane because it's usually used for pitch to go to the scuppers or go to the drain. But you're better off is using bad insulation, which is the one that was it the pink? Is it a Pink Panther? No, yeah, the pink one that has a
I think it is Pink Panther. I think it is.
yeah, Pink Panther. Okay, the Pink Panther. Thank you. Too much stuff in my head, and it gets all mushy.
No, you're all
And
good.
so, so when you do spray on, if there's a leak, that thing sticks, and it's very hard to remove because it's almost like I would say like an adhesive that it's a when I say adhesive, it is the properties for it is adhesion, but it's not going to, and that's so the product doesn't collapse on itself. But to remove it, you have to remove it, and it takes a lot of difficulties to remove it. And that's a problem because if you have a leak, let's say you have a direct leak that you think it's coming down here, and you're looking at it, seeing it's up there. Well, it might be 25 feet away. It's making its way down there because it's going to find its lowest point, whereas water works is basically it runs in the direction of least resistance. It's
Right,
normal,
right.
basic physics. And so that's a problem so be on the lookout for a lot of spray foam.
Quick question for you.
Uh-huh.
When you think about business growth, right, and you look at your career in the roofing industry along with being an architect, what do you feel like was the biggest thing that had the most impact on the business when it comes to growing the company?
That's right now, and I'm figuring that. I mean, I've been figuring out for a long time. It's always because of web and chat GTP and AI, the marketing for it is it's now gone on steroids, and now you have to try to see how can you outreach many clients. And the honest truth is, to grow, you really just want a good steady flow of good clients. They don't have to be a lot. Like some clients, it's like Google. I want everybody to be. You only need a few good clients that are proactive, that do pay your services well. You don't need like 300,000 clients. You need probably a good, maybe, oh gosh, even a small number as far as 25 or 30, they're calling you. Those are basically you want to work with management companies. That's another thought that they can give you steady, um, that to help you grow your business, that they like your services, they appreciate your services because they promote you. The property manager is basically the eyes and ears for those on the board on a condominium.
100%. Yeah.
So you want those, and same thing with commercial buildings. You want to be the same property manager who manages a high rise in downtown Chicago that's 20 stories, and you want to build their trust in order to basically make sure that they're calling you not every single time, but many times during the year, to whether small or big, and that helps. And I'm not there yet. A lot of people know my name, um, and uh, but I think many times it comes down to the pricing. I like working with homeowners, large homes, in the avenues, maybe that are 5,000 square foot homes and things like that appreciate their property, that are loved the way their property looks, whether it's inside or outside. Because I also do interior, but we're not going to go there. I mean, renovations and things like that. And it's good to work with people like that because they have a sense of appreciation of the value, not just your service, but the materials that you're using on their building. And so to grow, it's basically gaining a few loyal clients, customers. Some of them have become my friends, and they call me all the time. They're like, "Oh, man, that's hard to charge a friend," But I explained, I give them a reasonable price. I mean, I'm not going to.
Price gouge.
Yeah, I don't want to. Yeah, sometimes I say, look, it's so small the job. Look, I'm going to send you my labor or my technician to go out there. He's just pay him directly on the weekend, and it's a small job. I don't need to, gouge my clients for it. And so, but if it's large roof or large section, then I need a full crew. At that point, we have to like coordinate a lot of different types of material and also various types of labor and things like that. So.
No,
But to
absolutely.
growing is tough.
No, for sure. With all the marketing channels that you tried in the past, which which one is something that you'll never do again, and which is something that you would love to double down on, given that capital
Well,
investment was open?
yeah, the what I wouldn't do, it would be probably sometimes you going to a lot of networking event, I mean, to a point where you're exhausted because you're going to one every day. You really have
It
to
is
I
tiring.
wouldn't want to do that many. I am very selective now because they're the ones that seem to produce because you want to be effective and you don't want to burn yourself out because you have to get up the next morning really early to, get to your office and get everybody squared away and planned out. So those large, I used to do them every night. Can't do it anymore. I mean, I mean, for younger people, fine, try it out. If it works for you, that's great. So, and then the idea is basically I'm trying to get a grip how to share my passion and my excitement for architecture and maintaining homes and commercial buildings to specific clients that do appreciate good quality service and at the same time detailing and the materials are somewhat high end because good material lasts a lot longer than something that has a 5-year lifespan. So yeah, that's right now I'm actually trying to develop and teaching too. I'm trying to teach more, a little bit more. I'm not in that arena. My classes are small and I like them small, about 10 people, because it's a sense of like I'm tutoring them rather than teaching 30 or 40 individuals, because a lot of them, you can tell they get on their quietly on their phones and then starts texting away because they're bored because they just you lost their attention. So when you're a small class, you're right there and you're walking around the desk and everybody's doing and studying and reading and then absorbing the material properly. If there's questions, I can go on and explain it 3 and 4 or 5 times. It doesn't matter.
I
But
like
I
the
like to
intimate settings for sure.
yeah, it's an intimate setting. It's a very intimate. And when you say hands-on, well, and also I'm an architect and a contractor. The other people are more focused on, oh, just pass the exam. Don't worry about anything else. Like, oh yeah, yeah, start worrying about it because it just. I mean, if you're a seasoned what is it, a roofer, then possibly you don't have to worry about as much. But if you've only been doing it for 5 years and you're trying to, a guy in his 20s, early 30s, trying to start up a company, yeah, I give them good advice, what to be careful for, how to, and they'll call me later. They'll say, "Hey, Frank, I need some help. Can you come out and look at this? Because I'm not sure." Like, sure, I'll go out there and help you and take a look at it and give you some guidance. So,
For sure.
yeah,
Have you partnered with any marketing companies in the past at all, or
Uh,
has the main driving force been in-person trade shows or in-person networking?
yeah, yeah, and some in-person trade shows, things like that. I don't, because I tried with a few different ones, but they want their money up front, and then the results are just they take some months and months, and sometimes they don't really know your industry as well as you do. And that's a
Right.
problem. And so it's not that well, I do mistrust them because I think they're trying to meet their bottom line to get new clients. And then throwing you into Google, all this analytics and everything, I've done that. I mean, I've done a little bit of that, and it's like, it doesn't work so well. It's not all, for example, all they say, well, you got this many leads. Okay, what's a lead? Let's put a value to it. Let's put a dollar value. And really, it's a lost leader for you as a if you're, because the leads don't give me anything, just numbers. A lead is basically pretty much saying another free estimate out the door, which means nothing. Means that there's no way of comparing that to something to dollars. Okay, you're losing money, and they always want it. And so that's why the marketing companies, and they'll say, I get every day 5 or 6, 8 or 10 texts saying that hey, I got 300 leads. You want, I know what that's going like. I don't need a lead. I tell them, no, I don't need leads. I need signed contracts. sign contracts. Now that's and I'm more than happy to pay someone because people do this all the time. If someone wants to market my service, okay, I'll pay you based on what you bring to the table with a signed contract. That's fair. You've been working hard, you've sold it. But to go and start giving me all these endless leads and then I'm paying you or paying that company for just leads and they're not developing into an actual potential contract or project, then you're just throwing money, throwing good money into bad or something. And
No, for
so
sure. Throw
that's
good
not,
money after
yeah,
bad.
I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know in your experience, you say you were in sales. So what was work for you in that sense?
In regards to marketing,
Yeah. And marketing. I mean, how did you get your clients? I mean, because you had to compete, right?
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I typically did cold email. I'm pretty well versed in meta ads or Facebook and Instagram ads. Depending on the service that you sell, Google or Facebook would be better for you. Local service businesses, I do recommend going to Google. There is another strategy that I'm currently using for other roofing contractors that if you're open to hearing it after the podcast, we can discuss. But
Sure.
it really kind of depends on what you feel like brings you the highest quality lead, right? With that being said, a lead is basically anyone, well, if you're a marketer, they're probably gonna say a lead is anyone that filled out the form or said, "Yes, I want a new roof." But at the end of the day, that could be anyone, right? That could be a random name, a random number, and a random email, and then they never pick up the phone, right?
Mm.
I know you said you only wanna go to jobs where you have a signed contract and basically you're the contractor for the job or yeah, for the job, for the home. Are you open to going to, like, sales appointments where it's a qualified appointment? They said, "Yes, I want a new roof, and I want a contractor or a company to come out here and kinda walk me through the process." Would you be open to running that sales appointment, or do you only want contracted jobs?
Well, it kind of what I do basically when I'm listening to someone who called me, because like it calls to they look me up on through my website and I'm listening to their needs. And in some cases, like if it's nearby, like 15, 20 minutes away, I won't charge them for it. But when I start hearing, when they start explaining, and sometimes I'll be blunt, I'll say, hey, do you happen to have a budget for that? He goes, no, I'm just trying to get some sense of cost. Like, all bets are off. There's no way. Whatever number I give them, it's going to be too high. Whether it's low, very low, doesn't matter. They're just not going to. To them, everything's expensive. Someone was explaining that they wanted me to design something for them. I don't know, some building for a recreational for the city that they work more like a community center. And I started asking, well, do you have a sense? Have you looked at how you want this building to look like? Do you have any photographs like from other buildings? He goes, no, I'm just telling you what I want. I'm like, okay, this can go on forever because people change their mind very quickly and they don't know if they don't know what they want, how am I going to figure out what you're looking for? I'm trying to design something within your parameters and your parameters are very, wide open. And so I can't. So at that point, like, well, then I'm going to have to charge you, XYZ an hour. And then they're like, at that point, they say, I don't think so. Well, yeah. Oh, so you want me to work for free for you? Sure. So but I am open to go. I do go out to a number of places, and I do, and actually, even when I do them a favor, I go out there, I explain how I work, that I charge them, but I'm not charging. They don't generally come back and say, "I'll hire you." They'll find somebody else. In one instance, a person nearby had a very multi-million dollar home and had this major leak and I was highly recommended. And then when I gave her the price, I didn't charge her because they were like 6 blocks away from where I live. Then she said, well, it's too expensive. I called a mason and he put a hose to the wall and found the leak. Okay. Well, if I put any hose to a window or door, I'm going to get a leak out of it. I mean, and I said, well, that's no strategy. That's just brute strength trying to like create a leak. I mean, she did have a leak, but to say, "Oh, we found it," chances are she had multiple leaks. But whatever, because the leaks kind of you might have coming several leaks coming from different directions, and they all at one point meet, and that's what you see. But you can plug this one here and here, but the other ones you don't know because they're not actually properly sealed. but there's a process of eliminations when you do these tests. So yeah, but I know I'm
Absolutely.
open to going out there to do these types. I've done it before. I'm not completely against it. I just have to be careful because if now I'll be running around the entire Midwest,
Yeah, no one
doing
wants
like
to waste time nor gas, you know?
yeah. I mean, you lose time. It's like might as well stay home and I don't know watch football
Do
on the
anything.
couch. I don't
Yeah.
know what to say.
No, for sure, for sure.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
we got time for 2 more questions here. The
Mhm.
first one's gonna be, what does your sales process look like from initial contact all the way up until signed agreements?
What I usually do is that my proposals are the way I develop. It's not basically your straightforward line item estimate. It is summarized in that sense, but I include photographs because I go out and explain. And so I literally explain the process that I'm going to be basically developing as I do these repairs. I have photographs. You look at this area, these other areas, and this is what we need to concentrate. So I'm trying to open their eyes to a bigger picture that it's it's more than what they think. And I'm trying to gain their trust as best as I can. And that's really hard, particularly if they, like you said earlier, they'll believe their neighbor more than they'll believe you. And yet you're the qualified professional, but their neighbors is not, but because they have a relationship with a neighbor and neighbors say, oh, this guy's really good for whatever many reasons, then they'll go with someone like that. And that's always a hard nut to crack. So, anyway, but yeah.
Do you feel like most deals are lost because of price, because of trust, because of the sales rep or the
I
owner being unprofessional?
no, no, I don't, well, unprofessional, that can happen, but I think it's many times in my experience, they don't appreciate your services. So that's a lack of trust, you know? And when you give them the price based on your credentials and your experience, they don't put the two and two together many times. They just like, for example, real quick. So when you're when you're repairing an older building, whether it's a brick building and the mortar joints, has deteriorated or damaged, for an older building, you need to use what we call the O type mortar, which is a soft mortar, which is breathable because in ideal condition is that you want the mortar be sacrificial and not the brick, meaning that if water gets into the mortar, you don't want the mortar to have the strength be higher than the brick because then the brick starts cracking because water follows the direction of least resistance, so it's going to find its way out. And in a freezing and thawing environment we have here in the winter in the Midwest, that's a problem. So most contractors just do the end mortar, which is in the middle range, because you'll even see it on sometimes the specification, but that's incorrect. That's something that was written many years ago, and it's somehow still is consistent. It's on the books. But the end mortar, through the years, they have increased the Portland cement mixture. Portland cement basically is the strength for cement and concrete. So the more Portland you have, more of that ingredient, the stronger it is. So you now have to drop your notch down to a mortar that's slightly softer, and it's the O. So that helps. But most contractors don't know that, and I teach that because I teach these masonry classes. So I'm just don't want to deviate too much from the roofing podcast, but I'm just giving you an example that many times these contractors don't know the material they're using. They really don't
Yeah.
know it, and that's a problem. They don't even understand the process and the adhesion and how many nails should be going onto a shingle and what type of shingle is better than others. And now is a big thing about the Da Vinci shingles, which is say it's 100-year-old shingle, which is basically a composite type of shingle, which is a combination of plastic and maybe I don't remember if it has any fiberglass in it, maybe not, but it's a composite. And the idea is for hail, because we do have hailstone here, it doesn't damage it, it bounces off. So, but it's a very expensive. They've been able to, a company who makes it has been able very well to market as like the ideal roof. I can find other options for that, but my point is, it's oversold, and people don't know, and they're paying high price.
But yeah, if you wanna give us a quick, a recap of what you think. I think you
Yeah,
said it
the
was
quick
essentially lack of trust?
Yeah, and it's lack of trust. It's lack of understanding your credentials, even though it's on your website, you're explaining it to them, and then you're also discussing the process that you're taking. I do explain in detail the process that I'm going to take way before I've written a contract or a proposal. Okay, so they don't appreciate that because the moment I give them the paperwork because I don't generally give them the price immediately. I do my measurement, then I go back and um, it's most of the time they'll just say, "Well, I'll do it for this," and then I give them the price, and then I never hear back from them. And like, well, let me follow up with a call. Maybe they have some questions or something. He goes, "No, no, you were the highest or something." I was like, "Well, yeah, that's because you went to your bottom feeders. All your bottom feeders are going to be low to begin with. I mean, there's no comparison. I mean, if you go through the three of the cheapest guys that have, I call them two Joes in a pickup truck and one shovel, they're all going to be really low. And so you don't even know what you're getting. So that's a problem. I think it's the trust. I think it's the lack of homeowners, which they don't have time, and I don't blame them. But if they took the time to do a little research and maybe speak to the person, whoever they want to hire, and listen to what they're saying, because then they can compare that conversation to the other person that's having it that's much more detailed. That then they realize like, okay, I got it. I recently had it was a masonry building that had cracked bricks on the walls. It was a home. The woman happened to be an architect, so she obviously knew what she was talking about. She's retired, and they was recommended by one of the municipality. Oh, you should call him. He understands construction well, and he knows how to troubleshoot. The reason she didn't go because she had hired already a contractor. He said, "Well, if you're going to remove all this brick in the middle of my wall, right? How are you going to hold up the other bricks? Because if you take bricks out, what's going to hold the top? They'll fall." And the person
Right.
the person said to them, I think he became upset because he probably didn't have the answer because this is what she explained to me, that he said he got really offensive. He said, "Well, you need a structural engineer." Like, and she says, "But I never asked for a structural engineer. I just asked you a question and and he goes, "No, no, you need a structural." And so he pretty much walked out of the job, and the job had already been started a little bit, not much. Fortunately, thank God. And then I go, "Oh yeah, yeah, I know how to do that." There's a shoring system. We have dowels out there in the market that basically are drilled into the wall, and they're staggered, about 16 inches on center, going horizontal, and then 12 inches up, and then you stagger them again, you stagger them, and they go into the wall. You don't see them; they're hidden, and that's going to hold that plane of bricks because the bottom, when you remove it, it's going to sustain the load. And she goes, "Oh my God, that sounds pretty reasonable. That makes really a lot of sense to me." And then she hired me on the spot. So pretty much and so that's someone that, that's when I feel like, someone got it. Yeah.
Right. And how did you find that person?
It was actually recommended by somebody else.
Nice. A
They knew
referral.
my work,
Nice.
knew my work. And I do photograph and even at the end in the invoice, when I submit an invoice, there's photographs to that invoice. So the process. So if one day you want to pull that out, you have it, or you can call me and I'll email it to you. So you have it, we understand what happened. Because when you're doing this type of work, it's a lot of the materials behind the scene, meaning you see a brick wall, but what's behind the brick wall? You don't know. So, flashing, the lintel, the steel, the this, that. And so, and the shoring. So because of my background as an architect from being a field architect, but I always had to document everything. That's bled into construction where now I document every process. I'm very transparent. I'm not going to take advantage, or I'm not going to, hide my mistakes or anything like that. I mean, I am not doing that.
I feel like people in general, homeowners as well, because they're people, they respect the fact that you are fully transparent and like you don't shun away or hide from your mistakes. Because at the end of the day, we're all human, right? And at
Right.
one point in time, we're all going to make a mistake. I think they're going to
Correct.
respect you more for taking ownership of it.
Well, yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and I don't, yeah, and I'm not afraid coming back if I made a mistake. I mean, it's not malicious mistake. It's not with intention. It was just things happening. We're all human. We make mistakes all the time. We need to learn from them, but you don't run away from them. So anyway,
Right. Well, Frank, it was a pleasure having you on, my friend. Where can the people find you? Online,
well,
phone number,
yeah,
anything you want to give out
yeah,
to the
I can give
public?
you both. Yeah, you can find me online. My website is www.us-bes.com. B for, let's make it simple. B for Edward, sorry, B for boy, E for Edward, S for Sam, which stands for building efficiency solutions.com. My email is simple. It's frank at us.com. And my cell number is 630-842-551. You can Google me. I come up pretty quickly. Thank you. Appreciate the
Absolutely.
opportunity, Jordan. I enjoyed
Of
our
course.
conversation. Been an
Likewise.
honor.
Same here, my friend. No, for sure. Well, Roofie Matrix fans, we appreciate you for tuning in. With that being said, we'll see you in the next one.